It is time for Aina.
They are coming.
Welcome to my Frostbolt build guide. So, this build does not use Ice Nova or Vortex, it's straight up Frostbolt self-cast. And you get some really decent damage out of it, and some surprising survivability. If you've seen my older guide, this is actually a remake of that build, and it doesn't do quite as much damage, but it has way more survivability. I say it's a better overall build, in my opinion. So anyway, you didn't come here to hear me talk, let's get to it. This build absolutely trivializes Elder. I haven't been able to try Uber Elder on it yet, unfortunately, just because I don't have the right materials. I should probably just buy a map, but anyway, check this out. This is regular Elder. Doesn't get much easier than this. I'm glad that didn't kill me, because I really, I just assumed it wouldn't since he wasn't there, but I didn't know. So as you can see, I've got enough mana regen where I can just keep casting this continuously, and I've got enough DPS where those portals just go down instantly, so you don't even really deal with any adds if you know what you're doing in this fight. It's, like I said, it totally trivializes this fight. It almost makes it kind of boring. If you die with this build on this fight, that's an accomplishment. And if you don't complete it, that's an accomplishment too. I mean, you know, garbage gear obviously disqualifies that statement, but if you have gear even like half as good as what I've got, which honestly isn't even that expensive, none of it was more than a couple X. I think the most expensive thing is my Pledge of Hands, which isn't even a requirement until you get to the end game bossing. You can do just fine without the Pledge of Hands for most of the game. Honestly, you can do fine with garbage gear for most of the game. As long as you have mana and life on just about everything, you should be good to go. And look at that, look at that. Bam. Oh, it's gone so fast. But yeah, like I said, this fight's totally trivialized by this build, and I'm not that good of a player. You're gonna see me die a few times here. Like I die once in this fight here, and it's 100% my fault. It's not the build's fault. The way that this build is, you've got so much regen that as long as you're not standing in the stupid, you know, as long as you're not taking those huge slams, as long as you're not getting one shot, you're good to go. You will regen very fast. Just, you know, run around for a second while you regen and see. Watch this DPS here. I mean, this guy has quite a bit of life, and look at it chunking away, just chunking away. And see, my health isn't really being too affected here, staying pretty good. Yeah, you'll notice I've got some lag here, because you'll notice, like, yeah, see, like, I'm past the ball, and all of a sudden I teleport back. And look at that, I wasn't even to that one yet, and I just explode. But this build can handle it, because it regens so fast, even without, like, if you'll notice, I don't even have any life flasks on my bar. So, yeah, here's me being stupid. I just didn't even... I heard him say incinerate, but everything sounds the same. Incinerate, disintegrate, masturbate, whatever the third one is. They all sound freaking the same. So in my head, I heard disintegrate instead of incinerate, and so I just stood there until it was too late. And that's the biggest drawback with this build. When you're using the Pledge of Hands, you've got Spell Echo. So one press of the button, 1, 2, 3, 4. See that? Every time I press the button once, he casts it 4 times. So you are standing there kind of a lot. I see, I paid attention. I learned. See, I learned. This was my first time fighting him, and I learned. But, yeah, see, look at that. Anyway, okay, let's talk about how it works. First, disclaimers, I am on standard, and I just noticed recently that this has been nerfed. So instead of getting 100% of mana, you now get only 50% increased mana. But that shouldn't be a deal breaker for this build. This one isn't even maxed out on spell damage, and you get tons of damage anyway. So anyway, how this works is we use mana abuse, basically. That's why I have over 8,000 mana. We use Pledge of Hands, so it gives the greater spell echo. And then we start off with Frostbolt, which as a base gem has kind of a higher mana cost than a lot of other ones at 25. Not, you know, it's not incredibly high, but it's higher than a lot of other skills. And then what we use is we need a lot of mana, so we got Arcane Surge. Spell Echo, so we cast 4 times. Here, let me show you that real quick. So every time I press the button once, they do it 4 times. So, and each one, because of greater spell echo, gets 30% more powerful than the last one. So the 4th one is, what, 120% the damage of the first one? Something like that. So anyway, we also use Archmage. This is one of the keystones of the build. So Archmage uses your mana to increase your lightning damage. If you didn't know, lightning damage increases your overall damage. So I'm abusing that, and then that combined with critical strikes, that scales the damage pretty good. For added defense, I use... Where is it? There we go, Arcane Cloak. So Arcane Cloak, what it does is it spends 64% of your current mana, and 75% of your damage from hits is taken from that buff before your life or energy shield. So this combined with this here, where I have Mind Over Matter plus 10% of damage taken from mana before life, that means 40% of my damage is taken from mana before life, and on top of that, 75% of my 64% of mana is taken from that before my life also. So my effective health pool, if you go to Path of Building, okay, so my effective hit pool is 15k. So as long as I don't get one shot by 15k, my mana regen, my health regen should fix that. Because if you look here, I have around 2200 regen per second, so it only takes about 1 second to fill my life back up, and that's without any health flasks. So what we have here is we have Frostbolt that freezes and chills everything, because it does enough damage to do that. And then we have Archmage adding lightning damage to it, which scales the damage, and then we crit, which scales the damage. So we get quite a bit of damage just from this one gem combined with Frostbolt. So with the Frostbolt freezing everything, and the Archmage applying lightning ailments to everything, we do quite a bit of damage, and we slow them down and freeze them quite a bit. So that's a good layer of defense, is, you know, when they're frozen, they can't do anything to you, obviously. So the pros of this build are you have a pretty cheap start. You can start off with just pretty much Lightning Bolt. You can start off with pretty much Frostbolt from level 1, and then just keep going from there. You just want to get mana and life on all your gear, and you should be doing pretty good. And another good thing about this build is the damage and survivability scales really well with the gear. You can start off with really cheap gear and still do some pretty decent damage, but if you really want to invest in this build, you can actually get it to be pretty tanky and do even more damage. But it's not required. Like I said, it works with really cheap gear. Another good thing of this build is you actually, when I'm mapping, I'm not using the Pledge of Hands. I'm using this staff. And what that does is when I'm going around the maps, it's much faster. You know, you shoot twice. And then what I also do is I apply Herald of Ice when I'm mapping. And what that does is it destroys all the corpses, so you don't have to worry about things like the on-death effects from the Quill Beasts. Or any corpse explosions or things like that that'll surprise kill you sometimes. So that's why I use Herald of Ice. It's another layer of survivability and comfort for the build. Plus, like I said, it freezes everything, and that way you get, you know, if they're frozen, they can't be damaging you. So more defense. Another good thing about this build is you don't need a life flask. As you can see, I don't have a life flask down here. I just have a mana flask. And the more mana per second you can regen with the flask, the better. I should really have like 50% of mana applied instantly or something like that, or mana applied instantly. But instead I just have this, which is, you know, 28% increased amount recovered, so it's almost 3,000 over 7 seconds. This is a pretty fast regen rate, but like I said, if I really wanted to increase my survivability, I would get one that does like 50% applied instantly, something like that. This build can also do all content. You'll see clips later of me doing everything from the mining. Why can't I think of what it's called? The Azurite mining. You can do that. It's a lot of fun. I'll show you a clip of that later. You can do the menagerie is really easy. You just stand on one side. Same thing with the rituals. You just kind of stand on one side and shoot. Aspirant's Plaza is incredibly easy because you've got so much regen that the traps literally do nothing to you. You just walk right through the traps and just ignore them. It doesn't matter. I'll try to put a clip of that in later too. And with Tain's Laboratory, you've got enough damage where you can pretty much blow the guys up before you can even see them. Since I have long shot on this, which increases my damage the further projectiles travel, see up to 60%, I usually off-screen all the bosses, and it's, you know, it's safer that way because then they're further away and I'm doing more damage. So this build can pretty much do everything. And the best part about it is it's fun. It's not just another walking sim like some of the brands or some of the things like Winter Orb or minion builds. You're in control, and it makes you feel really powerful to press a button once and just delete a boss sometimes. The cons, however, of this build are I'm not very fast. You see a lot of builds where they're just zipping around the map. I couldn't get in a whole lot of movement speed on this build. Most of your movement speed is just going to be on your boots. So if you like the really zippy ones, I mean, you can use Flame Dash, but you can only use it so many times, you know, even with Second Wind linked to it. Another con is, like I was saying, the long casting time. Because if you want to dodge right now, see, I can't move for a long period of time. So you really got to know the mechanics of the bosses so you know when you can cast and when you can't cast. But I think it's fun. Once you learn that stuff, it's pretty easy. You just, you know, kind of stand out of the way of the bosses. None of the casts are actually too long where you can't get out of the way in general, because most of the time there's the animation, and as long as you're paying attention to the animations, you can zip out of the way at the last second. But yeah, it is a long casting time. Another drawback of this is luck sometimes sucks, and it makes fights a lot longer than they have to be. You're relying a lot on your damage increased by your lightning ailments and by your crit. When you get an unlucky streak and neither of those hit, you feel like you're not doing any damage at all. But they are synergistic. So as you cast each one, you know, the first ball shocks and chills, and then you take advantage of the chill and the shock, and, you know, the increased shock damage, and that increases your shock more, which increases your shock value, you know, your lightning ailment damage. And you should be pretty much maxing out your lightning ailment damage on this build once you hit like the fourth cast. If you're lucky, if it crits and your lightning rolls are good. See, that's the other bad luck thing, is sometimes, you know, lightning is a big variation on how much damage it can do. If you get unlucky and roll a low amount, you're not going to be doing that much damage. But I mean, that's just once in a while bad luck stuff. In general, you're going to be pretty much one casting bosses, not one shotting. I guess it's 4 shots, but one casting a lot of bosses, even up to tier 16. Another drawback to this build is, like I was showing, you need 2 weapons. 2 6-link weapons are preferred. You don't need a 6-link chest. I just did this for fun, but you do need a 6-link weapon. And you're going to be downing bosses really fast if you get a 5-link Pledge of Hands. but so with 6 link, it just becomes ridiculous damage. But at the same time, like I said, you don't want to be mapping with your Pledge of Hands, so you also need a decent staff. This one is a really good staff. For a long time, actually, a couple of the fights, or a couple of the maps in this video, I'm using an older staff, which isn't as good. Basically, all you're looking for on the staff is the cast speed. You want to buy a decent staff with a good cast speed, like the what's this called? The Takate, you know, the temple mod. But you can also use essences to get really good ones. So preferably you should do it on an Eclipse staff so you get that 100% increased global critical strike chance. But if you have enough critical strike chance elsewhere, then use whatever staff you want. As long as, like I said, you want the cast speed so it makes the build feel less clunky. If you don't have cast speed, you feel a little clunky. So let me show you the tree now and you'll see what I mean by that. So when you're starting your tree, some of the first things you want to get are like this for cast speed and these for cast speed. Well, this is actually double duty because you're also using the critical strike. So that one's really good. That one's a good one to get early on if you can. Then you want to get like this for cast speed and mana regen. See, mana regen is also very important. You're going to need a lot of mana regen. You're going to be using lightning damage. You want cast speed. You want to get all these cast speed first so that you don't feel as clunky. You're not standing around too long. That way it's easier to dodge the damage and stuff like that. So the first things you want to get is cast speed. But as you're doing it, you're going to be noticing you're running out of mana really fast. So you're also going to want to be getting mana wherever you can get it, like 20% regen here. This is a really good one here. These are really good ones here. You know, you want to be getting mana so that you have enough that you're not like casting once or twice and running out of mana too. So it's a balancing act as you're going. And then once you've got all the cast speed and got enough mana to keep up with the cast speed, then you can start adding the things like the critical strike. Critical strike will vastly increase your damage, but you know, if you don't have the mana to cast it, what's it matter, right? And if you're standing there and dying, then you're not having any fun, you know, so that doesn't help either. Okay, I almost forgot to point out this over here, the agnostic. The agnostic is very important for this build. While not on full life, sacrifice 20% of mana per second to recover that much life. That is how we stay alive. That's why we don't need life flasks. Also, this is, without these, Arcane Surge, the gem Arcane Surge is beaten by lightning penetration or elemental penetration. So you also want to get these because you're going to want to use Arcane Surge anyway because of the mana it gets you back. But by getting these nodes here, it actually makes Arcane Surge your top choice for one of your gem slots. Okay, well, I should probably fix that. Let me see here. Yeah, I don't need that strength. Okay, well, I don't know how I missed that until this exact moment. But okay, make the build a little bit better there. So now it's level 94, I believe, because I'm level 95 and I just saved one. So at level 94, you're basically doing everything you need to do. If you want to get more stuff, at this point, there's several things you can go for. If you want more crit, you can go for more power charges, or you could go over here. And this one's really nice because you get 2% of mana on kill. That's a nice quality of life thing you can do. If you really want to, you can do something like this, get 5% more cast speed, but you don't do, the majority of your damage is actually lightning damage. So I guess you could do both of these if you really wanted to, but I think this one would be more helpful for the cast speed. And then you can fill in stuff like this, get that. Down here, if you have enough strength, this is actually a pretty strong single one, but it's only for damage. It does nothing else for you, whereas things like this will increase your damage and your survivability, because the more mana you have, the faster you regen health. And that's why you'll notice, it's kind of a funny thing, but over here you'll notice that See your mana regen? It seems like your mana regen would go up when you get more mana, right? But watch. It goes down. And the reason why it goes down is because the more mana you have, the faster you regen life. See, look at the life regen. See how it goes up from 1667 to 1718? So, basically this mana regen number is here when, let me show you. When you're on full life, this is how much mana you're regenning. When you're not on full life and you're regenning health, this is how much mana you're regenning. You want that number to always be in the positives or you're going to be dying a lot. Yeah, what happens is your mana drains itself out into your health, and then you don't have that buffer from your chest piece anymore. So you always want this to be positive. So even as your mana is going into your health, it's still also regenning itself instead of draining itself. You might notice over here I have shock set at 60%. Don't really worry about that because you'll notice it does nothing to my my overall combined damage. Why I have that at 60% is to show you this. You go back to 60. You go to the tree here, and I like to have this critical strike chance because it just feels nice and comfy. Because when they're not on low life and you're doing 11 million instead of 20 million damage, then you come over here and see, this gives you about 777,000 more damage, and it increases your crit chance, or my crit chance anyway, from 51 to 56. 51 is really enough, but for some reason when I'm using this, it just feels like I crit every single time as compared to when I don't. So I just use it for quality of life, basically. But if you feel that you don't need it, what you want to do is you want to go to this one here. Increase by up to 60%, because if that one's actually not adding any crit chance to you, then it's not actually giving you that 777,000. So you might as well just take this, which gives you 666,000. So yeah, but if you don't have this set to 60, just a little lesson on POB here. If you don't have this set to 60, then when you look at this one, see, it doesn't show you any damage increase at all because it's not doing anything because this is from 50 to 60. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. But this one will still be there for now unless you do something like this and go, if you put them on low life, that increases your crit chance by 100%. And then this is the one that doesn't do anything. See? So you got to know what's going on to see what these actually do. But yeah, like I said, I like this one because when they're not on low life and when they're not on full life, it just seems to make it a lot more reliable that everything crits. So that's the tree. There we go. It's a pretty cheap tree. You don't need any cluster jewels or anything like that. These are your 2 frozen cobalt jewels, so every time you cast 5 frostbolts. Up here, I have a healthy mind that changes this life into mana. It's not really needed. Because you can pretty much get the same amount of mana by taking these 4 points away and just putting them like 1 point here and 1 point here, and you can find more mana basically. Yeah, stuff like that. It gets pretty close. You don't really need that. Don't worry about that one too much. It gets me a little bit more damage and survivability, so that's why I like it, but not a whole lot. It's not really needed. And ascendancies. So this is why low life matters. When you're on low life, or when the enemies are on low life, or when the enemies are on full life, you get 100% more critical strike chance. You also get more damage multipliers. That's why you see this big difference from 11 million to 20 million. You will see 20 million, trust me, like especially for the last, when the bosses are on low life. Well, not the bosses so much. With the bosses, you're going to be doing closer to like the Shaper bosses. Yeah, 12 million when they're on low life, and about 6.5, 7 million when they're not. Although that's actually kind of a low estimate because you will be critting almost 100% of the time when you have a crit chance over 50% with the way that POE calculates things. So that's actually lower than what you're really going to be doing. So yeah, anyway. And let's go to the gear now. Last part here. So I showed you my weapons. But for a helmet, I've got the Crown of the Inward Eye for the increased life and mana. And then the Transfiguration of Mind, I think it is the helpful one. I don't remember now. I think 2 of the 3 are very helpful for this, and the third one's not helpful, or meh. I forget which it is. For the necklace, I have Exarch's Foible because of the increased mana regeneration rate and the increased mana. It's huge amount of mana and mana regen here. This is a really important piece. It'll make your day so much better. On my ring, I've got curse enemies with conductivity and hit, life, and increased mana regen. This is another mana ring. It's for increased mana and mana regen. It's also very nice how you can't be chilled or frozen with this ring. It makes quality of life so much better. These gloves are just about resistances, life, mana, and then these are one of the more expensive pieces of my build, to be honest, because to get something with all 3 resistances and the 47% increased damage with hits against chilled enemies, it's it's kind of expensive. I am trying to re-roll the prefixes on this so that I can get an open prefix and make them into anyway, I want is life, mana, and an open prefix so that I can craft something on there, because obviously that cold damage to attacks isn't actually doing anything, and I can craft more life than that on there, but that mana is decent. Anyway, like I said, all you're looking for is get your resistances to 75 in life and mana. All that other stuff is extra. Like, see here, all you got is mana and life, intelligence for more mana, resistances. Here you got life and mana regen. Resistances, life and mana, that's all you're really going for on all your gear. You just want to make sure that every piece of gear has as much life and as much mana as you can get, and you're going to be doing pretty good. All this other stuff, like I said, all that, you can get cheaper gloves that do like increased shock damage against shocked enemies, or increased critical chance against shocked enemies. Those are pretty good too, especially if you don't have enough crit chance on your build. And yeah, like this is probably, this because, like I said, because of the hits against chilled enemies, that one's kind of expensive. And then this is probably the other expensive thing in the build. Nothing else here should be too expensive, especially later on in the leagues when, there's a whole bunch of these running around. Like I said, you don't need this to be 6-linked. I just do that because I have a cast on damage taken set up on it that does Hydrosphere, Cold Snap for frenzy charges, Vortex just for more damage, Bone Chill so that increases the damage with my hits, and then increased area of effect. So yeah, that's... Oh, and then the flasks. This is very important. The Cinder Swallow flask is very helpful for keeping your life and mana up because of the recover 3% of mana when you kill an enemy. Although I've got enough mana regen now where I don't even really need that. Here, let me show you what I mean. Turn that off, and then watch my mana here. See, I'm not killing anything, so I'm not getting any mana back, but I'm still staying at pretty much full mana. Every 5th one, I get it back, and I'm all the way back to the full, or back to full. So anyway, that's the build. Now I'm going to show you some just some random fights and stuff if you want to see how the build functions. Like I said, you'll notice that when I'm killing the bosses, I have the Pledge of Hands, which doesn't have the skin on Frostbolt. And when I'm mapping, I have the skin on and Herald of Ice on for the exploding corpses. So anyway, like I said, if you like this, it's a good high DPS introductory build because, like I said, it's pretty easy and cheap to get life and mana on everything. But anyway, yeah, if you like that, like, comment, subscribe, and maybe I'll see you back here for a next one. Maybe you'll even use the build. Who knows? Have a good time. See you later.
Special battle just for me.
Just need a moment to
Duplicate attack. Be renewed. Longer is better. The bomb is still Repeat my challenge.